Nguyuza,
Yeah.
are you gonna look at yourself in the mirror?
Why not? Like seeing myself.
I might.
You might what?
You might look at yourself in the mirror.
Once in a while. While you'll be sitting there, I'll probably look at you.
Oh, love me. What did I ever do to deserve such?
I mean, Tuelo. I wonder sometimes what my mother thinks of me.
What do you mean?
Like, I think I'm just constantly trying to outdo myself.
Yeah.
To a point where pretty much everything that I do because of what she's gone through and what she and I went through.
Yeah.
Right? Until I got to a point where I am today. So Kinali put this out, does it ever register in her mind that literally the whole goal is just to make us like good?
Like to be good.
Yeah, like to be at a point where we don't stress financially. Like her sitting at home and not working anymore.
Yeah.
Just sitting there and then just enjoying life, going to places, and then I just do the hard labor. Like I don't know if she comprehends that that's the goal for me. Like that's where my happiness is rooted from. Like seeing her, my sister, my family happy, and we're at a point where we don't worry anymore. I don't know if it makes sense.
You do.
Yeah, like it's you can never get a straight answer when you ask a person that question, but over and above everything, it's like when I'm sitting by myself planning my future strategies and doing whatever, like, or any project, big project that I'm back on, like the constant reminder is this is why we're doing this is the goal. So I ask myself, because this is like a thing with me all the time, does it ever occur to them that the plan? Because I don't think I've ever articulated it to them.
But I hear you. I think as a parent also, you want good irrespective of your child, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then it's reciprocal because the beginning of a child's stage, it is a parent's responsibility and duty to make sure that they're good.
Yeah.
But as the parent gets older, the roles in a way
They get reversed. Yeah.
And I think, yes, sometimes I would like to think that parents do get hurt when they get a sense of struggle, that their child might be struggling, or their child might not be doing as well as their peers, or what they imagine for their child is not transpiring, or if you have that transparent relationship that maybe you have shared with your parents that I would like A, B, and C, and the years pass by and you just don't get it. And I think it's like a natural thing. Like if Thabo went to school with Peter and Peter has A, B, and C, but Thabo doesn't, what does that do to Thabo's mother? And what does that do to Thabo?
I think for me, I get what you're saying. I've achieved a great deal. I think I've done a lot of firsts at home and in my family at large. So it's not even a question of am I doing well or am I not. I don't even know how to put it in words anymore, but I just feel like it's one of those stagnant things that I think living through the lockdown and the pandemic and everything, I realized that for the most part, they kind of still don't know what I do for a living. They can't really get, you know, and I have clients, you know, and yes, I make some sort of money and we get by, but I want to erase all of that. And then, because I think one thing that the pandemic made me realize was that they're not as clued up as I thought they were. So almost like I teach all my interns, you know, my staff, my team, just generally people who admire me for my work, right? I constantly give out advice in terms of how to put their life together. And then I think the lockdown made me sit back and question myself. Is it a facade? Am I really doing it? I just think it's a general thing as a creative and as somebody who I can constantly in the back of my head, I know that there's somebody who's watching, and then they're looking at me as a point of reference more than anything else. And it's all good. I'll figure it out.
It'll come to you.
It will come to me just like my designs come to me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
I don't even know where that comes from, but it was in my heart. It needed to come out.
It was a moment.
Yeah. We have a lot of those, don't we?
Don't we? Do people call you TN?
I found that, or Collectiv. I think people are more prone to Collectiv than they are to TN. I've recently heard a lot of people call me TNC. I was like, yeah, no, that's not gonna work. I think TN or Collectiv, but I think most of my clients call me TN. And then my friends just call me by my first brand name that I literally scrapped out. So they call me Thuka. Even now that I've moved back home, so literally everybody calls me Thuka, and I'm like, I've never had a nickname until you guys happened, because my first brand name was Thuka Designs, so it was the first two letters of my name and the first two letters of my grandfather's name. His name is Kanana, so I just I just took the TU and then the KA from him, and then it became, I don't even know what inspired that, honestly, but I needed to come up with a brand name, so that's what happened. So yeah, everybody calls me something.
And are there people who don't know that TN is actually a person? They just know TN Collectiv as a brand.
I have found that people don't know who TN is, but they know the brand. And I think I did that deliberately because I wanted my work to speak for itself versus people knowing the designer better than they know the work. Just these past 2 days, I think it's a day ago, I dressed Kelukumalo, and the amounts of texts and people saying to me, is this you, this is you, and this is your work, and I'm like, oh yeah, so I've achieved the goal, I've done it, I've made a success of what the plan was, because I feel like if people know your work more than they know you, then your job is done. Basically, you've achieved, you're an icon in a sense. You've just created some sort of, because my thing also is I want my brand to live beyond me, right? Even if when I'm not here, God forbid, I pass away, I still want the brand to remain what it is and on people's tongues, So I think, I'm happy with the fact that they know the brand versus knowing me. Because most people, when they get here, like, oh, you're a guy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a guy. And I'm like, what did you think who you were going to meet? And they're like, I don't know. You make clothes for women, and I assumed you have to be a woman. So, in a way, it's a compliment, because I feel like the goal is achieved. Yeah. I don't agree with people knowing designers more than they know their work. I think it's a faux pas. Yeah, it's a faux pas.
In detail, can you please introduce yourself and what you do?
So my name is Tuelo Ngunyuza. I was born and raised in Ga-Rankuwa, a township located in Pretoria. I'm a fashion designer by profession. I've been doing this I stopped counting how long I've been doing this, because I feel like if you're having fun at what you're doing, there's no need for you to put a time frame to it. But I've been doing this for a little bit over 10 years. I think I'm a product of a competition that's brought me to a lot of people's timelines and radar. I think for a lot of people, it might seem like a job. For me, is me having fun and doing something that I love. I think I stopped looking at fashion as a job, like most other people, and I started looking at it as having fun and doing something that doesn't get, when you play, you don't get exhausted. A kid can sleep now, and 10 minutes later they wake up and they want to continue playing. That's how I look at what I do.
What shaped your decision to get into the fashion industry?
Funny thing, I don't think I ever had a choice. or only because it was the only thing that I knew how to do. Most of my, textbooks at school were filled with drawings, and I think from a very little, as a young child, I sort of kind of understood that I was somewhat of an artist, until I started coming to self-actualization, and I realized that I actually love making clothes, love creating pieces. So I wouldn't necessarily say there was a specific moment that sort of pushed me into doing fashion, but I would cut up, like, how everybody says the cliche story, I would cut up clothes and all of that. But for me, it was more like altering what was already existing to sort of fit my personality. And that sort of graduated to what it is today.
And what came first? A sketch that is fashion inclined, or actually working with fabric, or interest in dressing well, or interest in clothes?
With me, it was interest in clothes. I was always fascinated by how clothes were put together, from how you put together a denim look, because when I was growing up, I remember I was born in the 80s, and there was a lot of your denim look, your jean to jean kind of vibe. And I remember one incident that sticks out in my mind. My mother bought me a Jonathan D denim pants, jeans, and I remember I did not want to wear them without a denim shirt. I was so pedantic about it to a point whereby my mother, I remember, she literally had to borrow my cousin's denim shirt and then put it in a plastic, almost as if they came to buy it. They came from buying it and then had put me in the look, and it was the only time I'll ever go out of the house. So I've always been very about putting the look together before it graduated into sketch and what I now call the process. My team knows when I start saying we need to figure out the process, they know this is where the design phase now is coming at. So I think for me, I was more about the look first before I could graduate into the sketch and the actual creating of the pieces.
And growing up, were you aware of your talent as a fashion designer, or it's something that came a little bit later?
It came a little bit later for me, because I think, like most black kids who want to go into a creative space, we have different backgrounds. Some are hard, some are not. But with me, I was fortunate enough to have a mother who was already an aspiring actress at the time, and she would do drama at school and all of that. So it was never a shock that I wanted to do fashion. It was just something that they were like, you know what, do whatever you like. Because I remember I started doing hair first. So which is something that a lot of people don't know. My clients always get shocked when I go to their weddings and dress them and their hair's a bit messy, and then I fix it. And they're like, but how do you know how to do that? Because for me, I've always been a creative, and anything that requires me to work with my hands and it's in the beauty sphere of things, I sort of figured out how to do, because I just never wanted to be a one-trick pony. So most people don't know this, but I actually had a salon at home before I was even in matric. I would braid hair. I remember once I was done with matric and then I went to tertiary, I stayed home at the time. I refused to stay at rest because I had a salon at home that had grown, and I had hired about 2 people. That I had a washer, somebody would wash people's hair, and I had a guy who would literally like undo other people's braids so that we can prepare them for doing like a new hairstyle. So I've always been creatively inclined, and it only started taking shape and direction after I studied, like literally in 2004 when I registered to study for fashion at TVT. So I don't know, I've always been busy with my hands.
Why the decision to study fashion specifically as opposed to something different?
So something funny happened when I was doing my matric. Because I used to sketch a lot, most of the girls in my class would ask me to sketch matric dance dresses for them. And I literally, I think from grade 10, 11, and grade 12, I had books full of sketches. So most of the people around me were already influencing like which direction I needed to take. I initially went and registered for fine arts, right? Which I literally never even went to one class. Instead, at my first year, I decided to go to the fashion department, and even though I was not registered at the time, I had registered for fine art. I remember I went into the class and I was like, no, I'm just not in the right place, because there was a model there standing there posing, waiting to be drawn, and I was just like, no, I'm hoping for machines, you know, fabrics and all of that. And I remember it was such a horrible mess that I made that, because I remember there was one of my lecturers was my mom's friend. They studied together, they went to school together, and she literally was like, what are you doing in here? Because I know you're registered for something else. I made a big mistake. I want to study fashion. And now we had to go through the whole process of transferring me from the fine arts department into the fashion department. It's a story. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were happy with the decision?
I was more happier when I got into the creative class where we do sketches. I remember literally I would not even skip one day. I went to school almost every single day of the year until I finished my first year. And I knew in that moment, I think like 2 months into it, I knew that I had made the right decision, because I remember I don't have anybody who studied or who was in a creative space except my mother, who just never pursued it, you know. I just had to make every single decision myself and hope for the best that it was the right one. So my gut literally was like on tune, was like, listen, you're in the wrong space, you need to go into this space where you're going to be your happiest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how has your parents' success and or achievement shaped your approach to life, given that your mom was like a great role model for you? And still is. Yeah,
you know, I think particularly my mother, because I never got to have a real relationship with my father. But particularly with my mother, the one thing, I'm very close with my mother. Like, we talk about pretty much everything. And the constant narrative that she always sold to me, or maybe sort of embedded in me, was that never to question myself. Anything that I do and anything that feels right, it's right in that moment. And I think I never comprehended and understood exactly what she meant until I got to live my life and literally make decisions for myself, because I, from a background where I was very sheltered, you know, we would go to school, come back home, and then do your homework, go to school the following day. So it was almost like a routine. And for me, when I started my tertiary year, my first year rather, I literally felt like I was a bird let out of a cage for the first time, because she was like, whatever you decide, whatever you do for yourself, whatever you want and it's gonna make you happy, go do it. There was never a question of, what do you wanna do? What don't you think you will need to start this? Even when I came with the idea that I wanted to do fine arts, they didn't know what fine arts was, you know, but they were like, listen, if that's what makes you happy, go. So for me, my mother never got to do much with her career as an aspiring actress, and I think a part of me genuinely believes that she lives vicariously through me, because then I'm the seed that she planted, and for her, because she never got to have the financial ability to pursue her career, she will do whatever for me to do what I'm able to do now, and sort of go beyond anything that she's ever imagined for herself. Yeah, so I don't think there's anything in particular that I can highlight and say this is what they said, but there's just a plethora of things that like moments with my mother when we have conversations, even at our peak, you know, whether we're fighting or whether we're at our happiest, there's always that reassurance. I think that's the one constant thing that I grew up with. Self-realization, self-actualization, self-understanding. She sort of reassures me of all of those things, that whatever decision you make for yourself, you need to stand by it and account for it. So it was nothing that I could specifically say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it's just the constant support, you know, and the constant pushing, the constant you'll be okay, don't worry about it. Yeah, maybe that was not your chance, maybe that was not meant for you. There were so many moments where I did not get things that I wanted, and I found that whenever I go back home and I want to have a conversation with her about it, the one thing was, yeah, maybe it was not meant for you. And I've kind of, I think I believe it more now, more than I did before, because I'm at a point in my life where if it's not meant for you, you wouldn't even, if it's meant for you, you wouldn't have to work hard for it. That's like my philosophy. That's something that I now go through life with. Because if you have to work hard for it, then it means it was never meant to be. You're going to lose it just as fast.
Do you have any key mentors or people who deeply influence who you are, what you believe in, and what you committed to in your work and life? Tell me about them.
Yo, that's deep. How much time do we I don't know. I kind of stopped idolizing people and now try to understand people. I constantly surround myself with people that I wouldn't necessarily say doing better than me, because I feel like that's comparison, but people who have a threshold of a mule, you know. I always reference my closest friends, Khothatso, from the designer Tsotetsi K L. I've never met any person in my life that has as much resilience as that guy has. I literally ran out of words, you know, because I think having worked with him and having been a friend in fashion and, you know, as outside fashion, outside our work, I've learned so much from him with regards to how to just put anything forth and actually act on it. I think the biggest thing that I had a problem with was just being present, you know, and actually realizing that this is bigger than just you creating pretty dresses, but, you know, you are creating a brand and a dynasty, for lack of a better word. And I think he's one of the first people that sticks out. I don't want to say you, because you probably say, no, why me? But I think I've learned also, having met you in the industry, I've learned true friendship, because I think how we met through other people, and we were able to sort of create our own understanding and our own friendship. And irrespective of how long we don't speak, but when we come back and we sit and we have a conversation about the industry, about work, about just, you know, generally everything, I always learned from you. And I think being in my 30s, there's something that I would wish for everybody, to be in a position where you don't rotate friends, or you don't rotate people that you work with, like a rotating door in a mall. You have constant people in your life that you know that there will be. I've learned that a lot of people are surrounded by yes men, and to a point where they literally worship them, and they don't actually tell them exactly what they're doing wrong and what they're doing right. And I think because of the work we do, and because of how beautiful and how glamorous it is, we tend to think we are correct at all times. So the one thing that I've done, and with the circle of friends that I have, I mean, Gail Mabalani is one of the most, I don't have a word. I have a word, but I don't know if it's the right word to use. But whenever I speak to her about anything, personal, work-wise, I always go back to why I started. She always tells me and reminds me as to remember the goal, you know, remember why you started. Don't care about the noise, you know. And she always manages to filter through everything without even judgment, you know. And whenever we are done in our conversation, I'm able to sit back and say, ooh, I didn't realize that about myself, you know, I didn't realize this about myself. And I think that's something that, if you are in a limelight or in a spotlight, for lack of a better word, you need people who are going to tell you the truth, you know. And every single person, I think for most people would be like, why him, you know, why? I generally want people that I'm able to be honest with, and I think that helps me in becoming the next big thing that I want to be. And I stopped idolizing people, because you like the picture you see, until you meet them for the real people they are, and then you become disappointed. I don't know if that makes sense. So I've learned not to see people for what they do, but rather for who they are. It's hard. It's a tricky thing to sort of like, you know, navigate through, especially with all of the noise that surrounds us, with all of the praise that we get from people about our work and everything that we do. So, I mean, for instance, we have a mutual friend, Teboho. Teboho and I would speak on the phone for hours on end, you know, and every time we end our conversation and I go back and I sit, I'm able to sort of reevaluate and sort of restructure, because you want people who are going to tell you things that you wouldn't necessarily see or acknowledge to yourself. So yeah, I don't think I have people I would put on a pedestal like that, but I love keeping things simple, basic, and real. Yeah.
I mean, the work that you do, and any work, I always say, any work is work.
Yeah.
Right? And any work requires a certain level of motivation.
Yeah.
What is the driver for your motivation to be able to do what you do?
Knowing that I do not want to go back where I come from. I think I didn't have a hard childhood. I don't think we were poor. You know, I think we were, what do they call them? What do they call the middle class, you know? So I now know things about the world that I've been exposed to luxury, for lack of a better word. You know, I've been exposed to a finer way of living, and I know that's attainable. And I think every single time I look back at some of the things that I didn't have, I know it's very vain of me, but the truth of the matter is I do not want to be without money. So be it whatever, I won't sit here and try and make it look like, you know, you get inspired by this. No, I love money. I love the idea of being able to make money. So whenever I think of the times when there was no money to buy certain things, to acquire certain things, I literally wake up and go work. Like literally, that's the only motivation. I'm not even going to put fine words to it and try and make it look like something that it's not. I think for the fact that I grew up in an environment where we were limited to a lot of things that we wanted, and you could only go to a certain amount of trips, school trips a year. You know, you got clothes within a certain period of time. You know, there was like a lot of framework with things that you wanted. And now that I'm able to do a lot of things for myself, listen, I do not want to go back to that framed life where you have to buy clothes and you wear specific clothes on Sunday, and then you go to specific places only in December. I really get motivated by the idea that if I work hard now, I wouldn't need to work hard later, or harder later. Yeah, but I'm mostly motivated by money.
At what point did you realize the importance of money, especially working within the creative talent business, that money, it is the coal that feeds the fire, money, it is the wood that keeps the bonfire burning and growing bigger? Because yes, passion is great, but without money, passion dies.
Yeah. At what point? I think, I don't want to tell this story so bad. I remember after I won the competition that literally exposed me to the industry at large. It happened in 2014, and I was wrapped up in the idea of, you know, I was part of this, and then this is much publicity that was on me, blah, 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 blah. And I remember 2015, it's almost as if the light died, you know, and there was absolutely nothing happening. And I think in that moment, I realized that I wasted the money that I was making in 2014 over things that were not investments, things that were not giving me return of any kind, whether it's a referral, whether it's, a deposit, whatever the case might be. And in that year, I did not have money at all. You wouldn't even believe that this is a guy who had just won a competition a previous year and had been exposed to all sorts of media and platforms. And I remember at the end of 2015, I just sat, in a quiet room by myself, and I asked myself, in fact, I remember I told myself, I was like, this is not the idea, this is not the goal, this is not why we are doing this. As much as this is having fun, as much as we are living our dream, but we cannot afford to waste any more money, because literally I was about to be kicked out of my flat, at the time. And I remember I just constantly said to myself, whatever I'm going to do going forward from this day onward, I need to make sure that if I spend on it, I need to know that it's an investment. I spend on something that's going to pay me back later. If I am going to go to an event, it needs to be an event that I'm going to make money out of it, be it in a sense of sort of socializing and making friends and making, clients, and acquiring clients. But I stopped doing things for fun and for the hell of it, stop going to all the events that I got invited to, because also as a person who was studying a business, as a creative that was studying a business, I did not need to be out as much as I was out, I needed to be here working, laying the foundation, cementing the foundation, making sure that even if I am not working for a month, I'll still be good. I'm not going to worry about rent, I'm not going to worry about overheads, I'm not going to worry about the team, they're not being paid. So that alone, that little struggle, when they take something away from you and then they give it back and then they take it away, I felt like I had a dance with money in 2015 that I did not appreciate. And it was so harsh that by the time I woke up to realize that I needed to actually take my work seriously and take my craft seriously, fortunately for me, it was not so late. I was able to revive my business and sort of build what it is today, what TN Collectiv is today. Yeah, money is a tricky thing. And I think I'm looking at a lot of young designers and a lot of interns that come in. The questions that they ask are more about the industry lifestyle and not about the industry work. I feel like we feed them so much because of social media that we forget and we neglect to actually literally harness and teach and sort of like engrave business ideologies into them.
Now that you have all these lived experiences which translate to lessons, epiphanies, dream realization, achievement, little moments and milestones, what would you say is the underlying message that ties it all together for you and TN Collectiv?
That's a hard one. I don't know. And I think it's weird that I'm saying I don't know, because I'm constantly giving out advice with regards to how to sort of stay afloat, how to keep your head above water. But I think for me, remembering the bottom line. Yes, again, it's a cliche thing that people say, remember why you started. I think we tend to get so swept by the beauty, all of the glitz and the glam. I have learned that remaining true to yourself, consistent, and disciplined as well. I think a lot of people, and I've seen a lot of brands die quite young. It's because of lack of discipline. And also remembering that you are a service provider. You are not a celebrity. I think that's what a lot of young designers are now coming in the industry and trying to become. And I'm like, you don't become a celebrity fashion designer. Remember that you're a service provider. And remember that you need people and clientele and other people who are going to contribute to your business just as much as they need you. I think for me, one of the things that I've done for myself that I'm very grateful for is removed myself from the idea of being seen, and remain in the background, because if you don't take care of that, it won't take care of you. If you neglect it, it will neglect you. So it gives you exactly what you give it. So for me, remaining humble, consistent, and accountable, then you'll be fine.
And what would you say TN Collectiv stands for at this moment in time after 10 years?
Funny thing is, TN Collectiv has taken its own life. I don't even feel like I'm in control of it anymore. I feel like it controls me, and I think the people that shape the brand are my clients more than I think I do. 10 years later, it stands for, I don't even think there's one word to use, you know. I think people who identify with themselves, you know, people who, I think also that's vague. I think it stands for originality. I think there's every single thing that I've always done with my brand, I've always criticized myself. I think I judge myself the most. So I've learned to let go and let it grow. You can never control a creeper. It will always take its own direction. I never used to make wedding gowns, you know, until 2016. And that was led by one gown, you know, and that was not even in my, it literally blew up, you know. So I've learned that if I stop trying to shape it and let it take its own shape, I think it will even grow bigger than what I would require it to. So it stands for individuality. It stands for this is deep. This is deep. This is a very tricky question, because time and again I try to sit down and write, jot down my bio, you know. And one thing that I've always come back to is the fact that I can never control, you know, everything. I stopped planning even now. Everybody's like, when is the next collection coming? We haven't seen a collection this year. And I'm like, it hasn't come to me yet. And I haven't seen or been inspired by anything yet. And I think we are at a point in time where I'm now realizing that my brand, a lot of people associate with my brand because it's real. It's something they can acquire, it's attainable. So I think I love the fact that it fits different individuals, but at the same time, even people who are not in a position to acquire it, they can relate. I think I've always tried to translate a message of confidence. I've always tried to translate a message of, like I said before, individuality, but in the same breath, it's current, it's relevant, and it's attainable. Yeah.
Fabulous.
That was a hard question. I was actually thinking about it this morning because somebody asked me a very strange question. It's like, how you describe your brand in 10 words. And I'm like, why would you want to do that? Because I've never been able to answer it honestly.
But that's why I said it's ever evolving, it's ever changing. It's not like a one, you don't write it down and forget about it. And I like the fact that you said it shapes itself. It eats you.
I stopped trying to plan this. Like literally that was supposed to be the next collection, but it doesn't speak to what the brand has become. You know?
Yeah.
It's very cliche. I don't do form-fitted gowns, you know. And as much as I want to sit and think of form-fitted gowns, it's not because I don't want to do them. I know how to do them. I would quite do them well, but it does not translate with the brand. Somehow people have, like, they've put it here.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like until I meet a client that's going to change it, because for now, every single thing that I've done has blown up because I worked with somebody and then we sat and we grew it, you know. I think as creatives we all have our own perspectives and our own way of doing things, that they become rigid. until the next person comes in and say, but don't you think we should put in a sleeve? I would love a sleeve. And because of women's insecurities about their bodies and certain things that they would not like to show, it has also made me smart in a sense that I realize that it's not about me, it's not about what I like, but it's what the next person likes. It's what then, because also remember, when we design clothes, we're not making them for ourselves. So what's the point of designing something that I like, but the person who actually wants to buy it doesn't like it? Then it's going to remain here on a rail.
What is your definition of design?
Yo, literally a conversation I was having with my intern yesterday. Wow, my definition of design, I think it's aesthetic, you know, it's originality, it's boldness, different. I'm gonna give you words. Also, I will always say individuality. I think one thing that I've learned, especially with my design process, is that it's not the same. You know, it differs from client to client, you know, person to person, even collection, all the different collections. So design for me, it's a state of creativity. It's a place that, and it's an actual place you go in your mind, where you harness and you put out everything that you've envisioned. That's my definition of design, actually. I didn't know I know that.
Nice, I love it. Did it surprise you that when you tapped into the collective of South African culture and heritage, that's when the brand actually boomed?
Honestly, yes. I think if anybody knows the history of the brand, they'd know that we started with a sports luxe collection, you know. And to tell you the truth, funny thing is, a lot of people think that there was a success because it's how I got into the industry. But truth be told, I didn't even reproduce any item from that whole entire collection. And until I got to work with individuals and started custom making garments and ensembles for clients, when everything started unfolding. I think that's why I say I never like planning anymore, because I feel like when we plan, God laughs at us. And it has literally spread so wide that I sometimes feel like I need to sit back and wonder how we are going to go forward. Much as it's a success, much as it has grown to be its own entity altogether, it really still surprises me when I literally go through the process of design, sketch, you know, creativity, sit with a client and do everything, and then that piece, you know, that one ensemble, that one gown, literally sort of like, it's like a trailblazer for the next one. So yeah, I don't know what it is about tapping into, you know, South African specifically cultures that sort of made the brand grow, but I feel like a lot of people identified with it, and I also feel like it was the right time for the brand to take that direction and grow, because every single thing that I've ever put out, yes, made money, yes, you know, we were able to sustain our business and grow our business, but not as significant as when we started Collectiv Culture. So, hey, yeah, it's still a surprise. It still shocks me every time, because I feel like the expectation now and the bar is so high that even during my creative process, I black out most of the time, and I still surprise myself.
When you are creating something, what comes to you first as a designer, as a fashion designer? Is it fabric? Is it a silhouette? Or is it the wearer? Is it a color?
It's mostly the wearer. I would say the client. I think one thing that I have done consistently throughout any consultation, I think if you were to reference any person, they will tell you that I always emphasize that if they are not able to wear it and own it, it will never be received. It will never be great. The beauty of it won't even come to life. So I've learned that you have to take into consideration the person you're dressing first, the person that you're creating an ensemble for first. Because I think as creatives, we become so wrapped up in our little fantasies, in the little creative world that we live in, that we put people in things that they're not able to own. So I've learned that I put the client first, I consider them first, before even choosing a color. Then everything else, for me it's easier for the rest to follow once I've established a trust relationship with the client, or a trust relationship with the wearer, for lack of a better word. So if we establish a trust and I know they trust me enough to put them in something that will make them look amazing, then like about 70% of the job is done. Yeah.
What influences your creativity?
Spaces, people. I think I genuinely like taking long drives because I see ideas in the most abstract things. Yes, almost everybody says that, but for me, I literally would look at, for lack of a great example right now, I would literally look at roots, and that would be probably for me a way of embellishing a gown. How I remember the one time I saw creepers, and I thought they were creepers, and only to find out it was an actual painting, and that sort of was like, I want to sort of now introduce hand painting in my garments. Never came to life because I couldn't find an artist that was great enough to sort of translate my vision into real life. But for me, it's like little things. It's, how you wearing that skirt, how you wearing that t-shirt, how you wearing that accessory. It's like little things. But I think for the most part, I loved and I'm still obsessed with flowers. So any flower, I would literally study it from like the petals, how they sit and all of that, and sort of try and translate that into my clothing.
When you have been working on a piece of work, when do you know that it is done?
Is it ever really done? I don't think it's only done when it leaves, honestly. I think for as long as it's in here, now we're working on it and we still at it, and the client we have not reached our deadline. We get to a point where we literally would just try to make it as perfect as possible, although perfection is something that doesn't exist. But yeah, it's never really done until a client takes it. Yeah, until we have to deliver to a client. That's only when it's done. It can never be done.
Yeah. And have you ever worked on a piece of work that was so beautiful that it embodies everything that the brand is and that you are as a creator, that you found it a little bit hard to part with it?
I think, yeah, my recent collection, like my last bridal collection, I think the dresses for me, because I had been working on them for such a very long time, what I was trying to do, because we had done several collections before under the Collectiv Culture brand, I needed it to be a little bit more, I would say, deliberate. I wanted to help brides understand that, it's one thing to do a traditional wedding, it's another thing to do a Western wedding. For me, it was about bringing the two concepts together, because I personally feel like we are at a point where we have such a beautiful culture, that we need to embrace it in every way and in every form. So my last collection, much as it was only 3 dresses, but those were like, I think I worked on that collection for 6 months, and it was just 3 dresses that I tried to perfect as much as I could. So they were, even to date, I still have the original pieces with me, because they were so dear and close to my heart, and I think they meant more to me than I think anybody could ever imagine.
Where are those dresses?
On storage.
So they mean that much to you?
Yeah, they're difficult to part with. I think certain pieces, like, I think for one, an overskirt I would do away with, but the main dress, because most of them were like 2-in-1, so you could actually utilize the overskirt. There were several pieces from the collection. Out of the 3 dresses, I still have the cobalt blue one. There's the Swati dress. For me, it was I don't know, there's just something about the fit of it, the make of it, how we created it. Even to date, even the pattern pieces, I still have them, because every single dress, unlike many other dresses that we've done before, some we look with freehand, some would just drape on mannequins and everything, but these dresses, for some reason, all of them had patterns and individual, sort of like markups for them. So yeah, they're like my babies now. I've kept them away from the studio because I feel like any time a person would come and see them, they would want to buy them off of me. And because of timelines and the deadlines that we have, I wouldn't even have time to remake them. So you only get them within a period of a certain time of requesting them, of course.
Can you please take me through this body of work? Like, were they themed? What is the story behind it?
So I had done 2 collections prior, and I think because I did not know what was going to come out of them, for me it was me putting out a collection just like any other designer would in a season. And these dresses for me came from a point where I felt that as a brand I needed to grow. I felt that I needed to have sort of like an aesthetic, something that people, that little one thing that people would be able to recognize. And also it needed to be something that I had not seen in the SA market yet, And the process of, I remember I didn't even sketch them first. I started by making them, right? And I just bought rolls and rolls of chew, and I started experimenting with what am I going to do, how chew reacts when you do this, when you wash it, when you dye it, when you boil it. It was just like a lot of experiments that like took place prior to the actual creating of the garments. And I remember even the colors, because of my biological father is Pedi and my mom is Tsonga. I wanted something that would sort of normally when clients come to me and they want like a wedding gown, whatever, I normally reference their culture. And I wanted something that would break those boundaries, where you can still wear it when you're Tsonga, you can still wear it when you're Pedi. And the one common thing for me was color, because we are a colorful nation. If you look at Swati has yellow. If you look at Venda has yellow. If you look at Tsonga has yellow. If you look at Ndebele, they have yellow as well. So I specifically chose the colors that I used because they translated in every single culture that we have in South Africa. So for me, it was one of those situations where when it came together at the end of the day, like once the process was done and I'd figured out the type of detailing I wanted to put on dresses, I went back to the culture, the fabrics that are specific to certain cultures, and used those to edit, sort of to give direction and give sort of guidance to a client that would want a specific dress. But it doesn't take away from the fact that you can still wear it. And most people don't get married into their own cultures, they get married into different cultures. So those were the sort of like all of the elements that I had to consider. And also I wanted it to not offend cultures. I want it to be culture appropriate as well. So it sort of culminated itself into what the collection became. I don't even have like specific sort of codes to say this happened because of that, but for me I wanted to translate and sort of encompass all of the cultures that I was referencing at the time.
Your career trajectory from having been doing custom from the beginning, made to fit, and then your first your first collection that really propels you into the industry was ready to wear, and finding yourself having to go back to made to fit, made to measure, and now transitioning the brand into a ready to wear. Can you please take me through that journey and how it works? You know, like, you find yourself.
Like I said, I stopped planning. I let things happen and all of that. But I came in looking to do ready to wear in 2014 rather, and found myself in a situation where I had more clients who were looking for custom garments more than they were looking for ready to wear. I think there was a lack of understanding and lack of identity for me in the beginning, because like the competition that literally got me into the industry, it was a fast track. So I needed to do something fast. There wasn't really a time for me to sort of understand and sort of mold what I wanted my brand to become. And funny thing is that irrespective of all of the things that I had planned, there was just this one thing that kept pulling, you know, which was custom wear. And I ended up giving into it, and that's how my business sustained itself for the longest time. And you know, 2-3 years go past and you realize that, listen, I literally stopped realizing that there was a plan, you know, that I needed to follow. And after having worked with so many individual clients, I think for me it was a good thing for me to actually go back to custom making, because I realized that I didn't really understand my clientele and I didn't really understand what the market was looking for at the time. So when I got to sit back, you know, and let sort of the brand sort of manifest into its own self, I then realized that every single thing, every single custom piece that I made, I'm able to actually filter it down to a ready-to-wear, you know, item. And I think that's sort of the journey now where we are, especially coming out of the pandemic. I had a lot of time to think. I had a lot of time to sort of sketch and sort of look at what I've done in the past and how do I sort of translate that into something that, an item of clothing that a client would want to wear on a daily basis. And I think where we are now, I don't want to put things into the universe as yet, but I feel like the brand is ready now to sort of put out a ready-to-wear collection that I have no doubt that people are hungry for. I have clients who come and make custom pieces and then come back and they're like, are you able to do this for me? Are you able to take that element that you put in that custom gown and into something that I can wear on it frequently, that I can, because all of my clients are clients that I have now are clients that I had 3 years ago, you know, a client that I had 4 years ago. So I think they too are ready to grow with me and have my items rather in their closet on a daily basis now. And I think for me, one thing that has calmed me down, because I've always been nervous about putting out a ready to wear. I've postponed it so many times to a point where people were like, will we ever get it, you know? And I'm like, yeah, it just has to be, it has to feel right, you know. And now I feel like I'm in a comfortable place where even my guard is down, you know, in terms of the things that I put out. And I mean, you can't win at everything, you know, but I am somehow in a place where I'm okay, you know, and I'm confident with the things that I put out now. And I think we are, as a brand, ready to sort of now have people. I mean, we literally started with a t-shirt collection that you and I have had a conversation about this, like I think 2 or 3 years ago. Like, why don't you put out a t-shirt collection? For me, it was hard because I'm so pedantic that I wanted it to have certain things that even when Jerry is wearing it, he's not gonna go, oh, the quality of the t-shirt is not good, you know, the print comes off, and little funny things like that. So I like to give myself time to research, understand, do samples, try them out, and once I'm confident enough that I'm 100% with the quality of work that I'm putting out, then everything just falls into place.
Cultural radar, what is moving the needle and hitting the cultural nerve right now?
Black. Literally. I think the idea that we are at a point, I think just as a country at large, we are at a point where we are so proud of our heritage. I think even the young people, are literally embracing our South African cultures, which is something that you hardly ever saw, in a few years ago. And I think people are more prone now to embrace, their backgrounds and everything that comes with being African. And I think it's a beautiful space to be in, because that's something that has been neglected. And I think having seen American or European brands sort of take from our heritage and then, sort of put it out to the world in their own interpretation, as it was sort of a rude awakening, that we are so obsessed with what is done abroad, and we neglect what the beautiful heritage, the colors, all the dimensions we have as South Africans. So I think I'm happy with what I see now. More young people embracing, our South African cultures, our heritage, even, our traditional ensembles. I think I work with a lot of young brides who are very, persistent on looking back, or on sort of taking inspiration from their own backgrounds, how their mothers got married, they want to do that, and I'm learning so much as well. I mean, I'm not that old, but I'm learning about the different cultures, like your Zulus, your Ndebeles, things that I don't know, and I'm finding out now. I just love the idea that younger people are now insisting on, embracing their cultures, wearing their cultures, sort of like embodying their heritage. I think that's what I love about what's happening now, especially in the fashion industry. People who are coming out with brands, they're embracing more of what is South African, and a lot of people are wearing South African brands, they're embracing South African brands. And I think also thanks to the pandemic that people are even putting more awareness about our heritage, our brands, and our local, exports.
By what standards do you judge yourself?
None. Honestly, none. I am at a point in my life and in my career where I'm confident in what I do. I don't need reassurance anymore. I think it's a journey for one to get to a point where you don't judge yourself, but you critique yourself to do better. And I think there's a very thin line between the two. I think when you judge yourself, it's because you're not happy with what you do, and you compare yourself with other people. But when you critique yourself, you want to do better than what you've done. So I'm at that point where judging myself in terms of standards, it really doesn't shake anything in me anymore, except that I don't want to put out work that I'm not happy with, work that I know if I were to have to jump into that ensemble, I'd be confident to wear it.
And what do you know now that you didn't know then, that you wish somebody told you?
I wish I was told to pace myself. I think we want to do so much in such a very short period of time that we neglect to do everything that we do well, so that you don't have to go back and do it again. I think if I had known then what I know now, I would be in a better place in terms of the work that I've put out previously.
What is your personal mission statement?
It doesn't get better than where you are now. It really doesn't. I think we tend to plan so much, and we would tend to want to do so much that we forget that there's a here and now that we need to be present at, or present in.
I am most happy when?
I'm in my bed. I'm most happy when I'm in my bed. That's my sanctuary, because I think I'm constantly working. I'm forever working. Even when I'm not even in my office space, I'm constantly working. I look at people, I take inspiration from every single environment I find myself in. So the minute I hit my bed, that's when I'm at my happiest.
I believe in?
Progress. I believe in progress. I think if as an individual you are not aiming at something and you're not looking to grow, you probably will remain in the same place and you wouldn't know it.
What is your daily prayer?
You got this. I'm not much of a prayer, but every single time when I wake up in the morning, I think the one constant thing that I have to remind myself is that if people can believe in me, why can't I believe in myself? You know? So I just reassure myself that I'm doing okay. It's okay. I think we live in an era where mental health is a real thing, and I think a lot of conversations are not heard, and people are not having a lot of conversations because of a lot of things are still taboo. But I reassure myself every single day that I'm doing okay, you know. And I think it's important for people to get to a point where they know that their best is good enough.
What do you wish for yourself?
To retire by 50, honestly. I think I've started working when I was young, really young, and much as I enjoy it, but I feel like I want to get to a place where I can really appreciate the hard work that I've put in my craft, and I'm able to sit back and not stress about whether a deadline is met, whether a client is happy, and I think that will only happen when I retire. For as long as I'm able to still physically work, I don't think I'd rest, and I don't think I'd ever be in a serene place.